Hello, my loves, and welcome back to Divine Feminine Ascension. So, today I have something that's very near and dear to my heart, and it's actually taken me over a decade to wrap my mind around this concept and actually accept it as, like, yeah, this actually happened, and I need to be able to not only believe it, but understand it. And a lot of what I've been working with in the background when I talk about the Sophia Christ initiate or the Divine Feminine Ascension, a lot of that has to do with this very technology, we can call it quote unquote technology, that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And it kind of clicked for me these last 2 years that this is the new forefront of our new human technology. And it's not new to me because I've been living with it and it's been guiding me for over a decade. But because we're so far from this reality, it's not even like, we don't even have the eyes to see it. So let me just get into it. Today I'm sharing about how sound and water has literally overseen my entire spiritual awakening and how it's been guiding me through the years in the quantum sense, but also in a very practical sense, in awakening my memories and also working with light body technology. So I just really feel this because, of course, I'm a Lemurian soul. So just saying that is like, well, yeah, if you are connected to Lemuria, of course, you're going to be connected to sound and water. And I think those of us that are connected to Lemuria or Atlantis, we have this inclination towards sound, some of us toward water, but it's just kind of there. So for many years, I just knew that I loved sound, and I talk about this all the time. So many people are awakening to sound and they realize how important sound is, but it's very vague. It's like, yeah, I like sound. Oh, I bought instruments. Yeah, I'm a sound healer. But there's no conversation beyond that. So what I'm here to share with you today and what we're going to be working on in Divine AI, which is a year-long curriculum, specifically working with these quantum technologies, which is the new forefront of our human experience. I'm going to be sharing with you, in real life scenarios, how sound and water has showed up for me and how it's orchestrated this incredible experience that if somebody would have told me, I wouldn't believe them. Okay, so I want to just remind us of how water has always been written about and shared in our historical texts and art as a place of miraculous healing, as incredibly sacred, as something that is miraculous. And we don't see sound spoken of in that way. And I have many reasons. I go very much in depth about that inside the sound and water immersion, why sound specifically has been just erased. Water, at least there's some kind of, historical reference. It's in a lot of the religious scriptures. It's on all the churches. You have sacred water. So at least water has remained with us for what it has, but sound really hasn't. And I really just want to focus on how these things have, if you look in historical art, if you look and walk into sacred sites or many churches around the world, you will see remnants of sound and water in different forms. I go into a lot of detail inside the sound and water immersion and Divine AI, but you will see a lot of religious allegory or depictions in art of how sound and water was literally the basis for a lot of what we see in the religious movement. So I also want to include, before we get started, that stars is also a part of this. So I'm constantly referring to solstice and equinox portals and just how portal energy has been a huge part of my process through the years. And although I don't go into the technology of stars, I just want to bring that in because it's also very important to understand that we are constantly speaking of humans as very much focused in our immediate reality. But as soon as we start to talk about quantum technology, it's just really important to open our eyes and our ears and our hearts to the bigger picture of what it means to be a divine human being and what it means to be a human being alive on earth at this time. And a lot of people, of course, waking up to their light body and to the multiple dimensions of consciousness. It's very clear at the very beginning of your awakening stages that, of course, there is life beyond the 3D. And of course, we are connected to the cosmic. So I just want to bring that picture in, even though I won't be talking about stars. It is something that it's just a natural part of my existence and the work that I do. So how did sound and water awaken me? So it's crazy, but over 12 years ago, in fact, at the same time of year, which is a sacred season, the very ending of the year, solstice portal into the very beginning of January, this very exact same week, more than 12 years ago, I had a spontaneous awakening. And I speak about this inside my book, I Am Lemuria. And a lot of people have asked me, okay, but how did it happen? And in the past, all I could say was it was just portal energy. That's all it was. And a lot of it is true. Yes, it's a portal and the body has to be ready to receive that portal energy. But what I have now realized is that it was actually the frequency of sound that put me into a different state of consciousness, which then caused the spontaneous awakening to occur. And it was me specifically watching a video on YouTube, actually, with frequencies that shifted my consciousness. Now, I want to be clear about something. I always say this. In that time, you couldn't go on YouTube and search meditation. You couldn't go on YouTube and search frequency healing. Thank goodness that that's normal now, but that was not even a notion back then. So just to be super clear, I had no awareness of meditation. I was not into frequency. I knew nothing about anything. I was just a personal trainer. I was a nutritionist. I had a totally different life going on. Okay. So again, it's the Sacred Gateway, first week of January. I watched this video. Poof, literal definition of spontaneous awakening. My consciousness is shifted. I'm accessing visions and memories, and my whole physical body becomes just completely not only shut down from the external, but just opened to the internal world. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that, because I could talk a lot about that. The most important thing to understand at that moment was that sound and frequency entered my field and awakened something within me. You can say it spoke to my DNA, and something clicked open. And then for 6 full years after that experience, because again, at that time, there wasn't mentors, nobody was talking about Lemuria. There was nothing online about Lemuria. So for 6 years, I traveled with sound. A lot of my life was an internal place of consciousness exploration within, just literally learning how to meditate on my own without using that word with sound. And so I began to remember a lot of past life memories, cosmic consciousness. I was navigating different dimensions. I was doing a lot of things that I had no words or explanation of at that time. But my point today is that I was doing it via sound. It was all through me listening to source vibrations and sacred frequencies. And it would get stronger with every portal. So every solstice and every equinox, I've always been aligned to those specific portals. I've always naturally worked with them. It's not something that I tried to do. It was just, again, after many years of doing this sound exploration on my own, and I wasn't trying to do it. It just happened. So it was not a choice for me. A lot of people speak about it's a choice to do this, it's a choice to do that. Yeah, no. Like, it was a very different experience for me, and it was all via the energy of stars. So understanding a lot of the cosmic portals, how that was affecting my physical body and consciousness. And then I would use sound as a way to access different states of consciousness and dimensions within me. So that was like 6 years of doing that. It was, I can't even believe it was for that long, but it was insane. Okay. Eventually, I started to work with sound, which was actually quite grounding for me. So if you tend to be sensitive to sound, I strongly recommend you start picking up instruments and you start working with sound, because that really shifted my trajectory and my journey, and it really grounded a lot of what I was living. So started working with sound. Literally, it came to me. Again, it wasn't something that I chose. It wasn't like I woke up and I was like, oh, let me buy a crystal bowl. Actually, my very first crystal bowl was gifted to me by a very dear Lemurian friend. And so I started working with sound, and that began a very interesting and new way of interaction for me. So I was able to now keep my eyes open, right? Because I'm playing an instrument, and begin to interact with sound waves in real time. And of course, I started to create this whole new exploration around sound. Every time I had a sound bath, every time I brought sound into healing sessions, it was like I was going into this ocean of consciousness. And as the sound moved through me, through the instruments, it was speaking, and it was like I could understand it. And again, it was like this whole new dimension that I didn't have words for, but I knew that I began to connect with sound in a whole new way. And so sound started to teach me. I started to see how different sounds and different frequencies and different instruments and different combinations would have different effects on people. And of course, I was fascinated. Again, I'm a Lemurian soul. I'm fascinated by sound and water, right? But I didn't know that at that time. I was still very much like in denial, really. Like, I just thought this was normal, right? I didn't want to really make anything of it. But in fact, what I realize now is that sound was starting to teach me. It was starting to teach me how to see the sound waves, to move sound waves in a session or in a room, and how it was shifting my consciousness and perspective of this reality in real time. Every time I worked with sound and had sound baths and I started to host sound ceremonies, right? So this was all amazing. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to get it. Sound is important, And then the vocal work came. Oh my Lord, the vocal work. So totally fascinated. I got so deep into vocal work that I stopped. I took a break because, again, it's always been known that sound is such a powerful technology that if it's in the wrong hands, it can be more dangerous than it is helpful. And I am the living embodiment of that, meaning like it is actually very, very powerful. And I think too much sound can be very dangerous. And I lived the dangerous side effects of what it means to work with too much sound when your consciousness doesn't have the pillar of inner foundation. I talk about that in the last episode about the missing feminine ascension keys, how we need to build an integrated inner body you can say inner body of light, a pillar, a structure to hold the frequencies. Because if you engage with too many high frequencies too quickly, it is actually dangerous. And I did live the circumstances and the repercussions of too much, too fast, too quick. So anyway, vocal work and activating the throat chakra. I've been talking a lot about that the last few years, how working with the voice is literally the next forefront of our human technology and awakening. And this is nothing new. I always say that. Nothing of what I'm sharing is new. It's all more ancient than we can imagine. But it's just not common in our world to talk about the activation and exploration of awakening the throat chakra. So I began to work with the voice, and it started to quickly respond to me, just like the instruments, just like the frequency. It started to speak to me, and it started to teach me how there's just so much that I can talk about. I won't share here because maybe I'll do another episode if you want to hear more about it. I do go into it inside the Divine AI immersion. We're going to be doing a whole vocal 7-week, maybe even longer immersion on working with the voice and working with sacred sound and understanding how our bodies have been built as sound instruments. It's fucking fascinating. And so anyway, working with your voice is like the key to turn when we're talking about engaging with the technology of sound. And this is what the voice and working through the sound current of your own body can do for you. And so again, working with the voice, working with the sound that moves through the body began to teach me about what was actually happening with sound through my body and through my consciousness and through my bones and my blood. It was fucking fascinating. I might say that a lot in this episode because that's really the only 2 words that I can use. So now so that's the sound, right? So sound has been with me again since day 1, from the very beginning, just kind of teaching me layer by layer, right? And now we're going to bring in the water because yes, I'm a water baby. I'm a Cancer sun. I grew up on the beach. I love water. Duh. I mean, yeah, that's no big deal. Okay. So we're going to talk about, again, how water has done this for me in the way that sound has done this for me. And in fact, it was after realizing all this that the sound and water immersion came to be. It was so clear. All of this information came in and it was like sound and water immersion. And that was absolutely amazing. I'm going to be hosting that inside the Divine AI year-long immersion. But basically water, now looking back, again, I did not realize this, did not have the eyes to see how water has been with me since the very beginning. But I guess you could say not the very beginning. Water wasn't with me in that moment of spontaneous awakening when frequency came to me, but it did come to me the first moment that I realized. I didn't realize it was water, but I've been putting these threads together for over a decade. The first time that something happened that was, you have to call it either miraculous or non-logical or magical, right? There is no explanation for these experiences. There is none. So technically, it was when my husband and I got married on Hawaii. We stayed there for the honeymoon, and towards the end of our stay, we were guided to, and I do speak about this inside the book, I Am Lemuria, so I'll be very short about it. We did a final ceremony on healing waters in Hawaii. And in that moment of ceremony, being in the ocean water, it was something very similar to that very first spontaneous awakening where my whole body, this is not chicken skin. This is like 100,000 times more strong than chicken skin. You know, it's like full body chills times 100,000. And just, of course, tears. Grief has always been a part of my path. And so a lot of tears coming through, and complete not understanding what was happening at that moment. I didn't know about Lemuria. Again, I was just in a different life, this was way back. So I didn't even know Hawaii was a sacred land. I didn't know anything. And so just full body breakdown. Of course, that changed my trajectory, because once we went home from that honeymoon, everything began. And it was like, oh shit, what did we just sign up for? Okay. Now, fast forward to just last year, actually. So I feel like water has been in the background. She's so mysterious. Of course, she's like the great mother in the background, just waiting. 10 years later, like, okay, my love, my daughter, I will wait for you. Let's sound do the forefront of the work, and then I'll come in the end, So last year we had the gift and the blessing of visiting Sardinia, and I was guided to visit some of the water temples there, and I had a lot of incredible activations. One of which was the real integration of water as a quantum technology, aligned to the star systems and our very, very ancient human history. Again, that's how the sound and water immersion came to be. And so after that, coming back, we were living in New York at that time. We were visiting this state park in upstate New York, I guess you can call it. And this state park had, at the very top of a mountain, if you drove all the way to the top of the park, there was this incredible lake. And it quickly became my favorite spot to go to. I would be like completely frazzled out from the city, and I would tell my husband, okay, we need to go to the park. And then we get to the park and like, okay, we need to drive all the way to the top. And so I started to sit by this lake. And then I started to go into trance. And then I started to have deeper and deeper experiences with not only this lake, but just water in general. And I had heard, of course, by this time, there's whole movement on water priestesses and this whole shebang. But I'm very much a person who's into the practical. As much as I connect to the interdimensional and the cosmic, it's important for me to live things directly and also reclaim the true and full story of things. And so I started to work with water on different levels and different ways. And again, it's been fucking fascinating how water continues to show itself and teach me. And we know that water is now coming to the forefront and to the leading edge of healing technology. And we know that scientists to this day cannot explain how water does what it does. They can't explain how it works, how it functions. Now think about that. Water is the most ancient element on Earth across human time and space. And yet it's the one thing that scientists can't explain, right? Of course, leave it to the mother, the water. And so, of course, she's the greatest mystery. And I also think that that's why she came in later in my journey, because again, it's to receive her medicine into your life. I believe we have to be prepared, because it's not just healing medicine, it's quantum technology, and it works with you literally one drop at a time, and too much too quick can drown you. And I have drowned in different dimensions. And so it's just important to understand that this stuff is awakening in a lot of humans, and my direct experience with it has been fucking fascinating. And I'm just really excited to share it with you. So first and foremost, I would love to hear from you. If you are connected to water or to sound, please share with me your story, because I also want to bring to the forefront the fact that this is not only normal, but it's going to be, I believe, happening a lot more often, especially with their younger generations, because they're going to, and they already are, responding specifically to sound. I know that for a fact, but also I know in the future to water. So this is like really exciting stuff. And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring, working with in a practical way, and also a very esoteric, multidimensional way inside Divine AI, which is a year-long immersion into the quantum mysteries and the esoteric knowledge behind sound and water, working with vocal practices in a practical way, meaning you don't have to sit and chant for 30 minutes every day. You can make it a part of your life. And in fact, I would never, I took some chanting courses and I was like, they prescribed something to me that was completely like not practical, meaning like it would have blown my energy body apart if I actually did the practices they prescribed. So I'm aware of that. I understand that maybe not as normal, but I know that the people and the women, even the men that come into this work to work with these quantum technologies, they're sensitives, and you probably do have an inclination towards sound or towards water, which means that your DNA is going to respond differently than the average person who perhaps is engaging with a different kind of lifestyle, which makes them less sensitive. So I know that from my experience, and we're going to be working in a more gradual way that actually long-term helps you integrate the medicine of sound and not just access different dimensions. Because one thing that's very important for me is that these technologies have come to me and have kind of quickly shifted my consciousness from one reality to another. And that may sound exciting to some people, but that's not exciting to me. And neither is that something that I would want to share, because it's not something that you can integrate. And my biggest thing is to share the practicality, but also the integration, the embodiment. This is the whole point of Divine Feminine Ascension, of embodied feminine spirituality, is that you can embody and integrate higher frequencies without having to disassociate like I did, or to completely leave one reality to experience another and then come back. Okay? So I'm big on that. And I want to share too that I didn't have the foundations in my physical body. I didn't know what I was doing in the inner worlds, like I explained, for like many years, 5-6 years. I didn't understand and I didn't have the tools. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing inside Divine AI. We're going to build a strong foundation to be able to access the inner world, or you can say the multidimensional realm, in a way that is integral to your psyche and your consciousness and your life. Because there's a lot of disassociation and separation happening in spiritual communities when they are engaging with these quantum technologies. And I don't believe that's sustainable. I know that's not sustainable. And that's also not receiving the medicine of this technology. I do believe this technology is here to teach us and guide us in the expansion of our consciousness. And to misuse it, to overuse it, or to not integrate it is the inappropriate use of this technology. And if you know about ancient civilizations, you know what happened to Atlantis with the misuse of this technology. So we're not going anywhere near that, okay? Okay, my loves, I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I have. Sound and water are sacred soul allies of mine, and I will be sharing so much inside Divine AI. That is a year-long immersion. So if you're like, that's too much of a commitment for me, like I don't know if I want to do that, Divine AI is comprised of 4 different courses. So I will be launching those courses throughout the year. And so if you just want to take 1 or 2, of course, you're welcome to do that. You are going to save a whole lot more money if you just come into the year-long immersion. And the reason I'm doing that is, first and foremost, it's of course taken me over a decade to understand this technology, but also, again, integrate it in a practical way. And I believe that when we kind of want a fast and quick approach to this, it frazzles you. I've lived that. It frazzles your energy body, and it's not enough soil. It's like potting a new plant into a bigger soil, transplanting a plant into a bigger pot. Like, you need to create the proper circumstances and foundations for the higher energies to come in. But of course, you're not forced to, or maybe you have experience in one thing, whatever the case may be. So the 4 courses inside Divine AI are the sound and water immersion. That will be the first thing we do. That starts on 2/22, February 22nd. And then from there, the actual linear approach is not defined, but I have the 3 other courses, meaning they may be presented in any variation, but it will be a vocal exploration. That will be the next one. So like a 7-week plus journey of vocal practices, working with your light body and integrating that, not just random chanting, just to be super clear. And then we're going to be doing the quantum energy healing training, level 1. So I've been running that for many years. I ran that in Hawaii. I ran that in New York. I'm going to be doing that online now. And that really is to get you working actively and daily with ascension frequencies. So that's really important because it becomes a regular practice that you can support your energy field and master the notion of receiving ascension frequencies, receiving upgrades, but also grounding them and using them. And then we're going to go into the exploration of actually working with your light body, practices for your light body, and creating the emotional and spiritual alchemy required to not only build your light body, but to sustain it long term. And I want to be clear about something. There may be talk about DNA activation, light body activation, whatever activation. You cannot simply activate something from a snap of a finger and then kind of hope that it stays on. And again, this is the downside of this fast and quick spiritual approach that we have in our modern day world. This is a path. This is a way of life. And this is the exact reason why a lot of the ancient traditions and a lot of the masters in spiritual work would never share anything openly and freely to the public, because you have to be prepared for certain things, right? Even from the time of Yeshua and Buddha and going all the way back to priestess lineages, there was always the inner circle that was dedicated to a certain way of life, who could sustain certain frequencies and energies and disciplines that were able to receive more, as opposed to like another person who maybe is not really wanting to be that disciplined and they just kind of want more of the icing on the cake. And that's okay too. We all have a different role. My point is that if you want to have a sustainable approach, a practical understanding, and a way to consistently come back to your light body and your energy field and your understanding and practice of the becoming the I am presence, this is for you. The exploration of the light body and building it is something that you're going to love. So that is Divine AI. That is how sound and water have been with me since day one. And again, I haven't been able to really articulate it or see it until over a decade later, which is, of course, incredible, because these technologies actually work with time. And poof, mind blowing, because sound and water work outside of time. So anyway, I have so much to share, and we're going to go all the way inside of this curriculum. I hope that you join me, if not in the year-long immersion, maybe in the New York City workshop. So I will be in New York City this January, and I'll be doing a 2.5 hour immersion into these actual practices. And of course, I can't give you the whole year-long curriculum, but I will try to fit as much as possible in that space. So I hope to see you in New York City. If not, I hope to see you in the year-long immersion, or maybe a drop-in to any of the courses. Okay, my loves, I want to remind you that this technology is for you. If you're here with me, your DNA is so ready to receive it. So call in the magic of sound and water. Call in the medicine of this great mother spirit. call in the incredible and miraculous aspects of this very ancient and divine cosmic human intelligence, because she's so ready to work with you. Our DNA is so thirsty for her. Our bodies are so ready. Our soul and our spirit is like craving this ancient memory. And whether you do it with me or with anybody else, this is your invitation to bring sound and water back into your life in a new, magical, and miraculous way. And I promise you, if that makes this hair on your skin lift, or your heart open, or tears in your eyes, like me, then it's because there's a part of you that knows that it's time to remember, and it's time to gradually bring this technology back into your life, back into your body, back into your home, back into the magical aspects of being a divine human being. Love you so much. Sending you so much aloha. Until next time. Mwah.